Hello everyone, and welcome back to Legends of the Jedi. Last episode, we talked about the Freedon uprising on the planet of Onderon. Our Jedi heroes, Nomi Sunrider and Ulic Keldroma, joined forces to defeat the evil King Amin and liberate Onderon, yet again, from the clutches of the dark side. In today's episode, we begin a whole new story arc entitled Dark Lords of the Sith. The story arc takes place approximately 1 year after the events of the Freedon uprising. So right now, we're in the year 3997 BBY, or before the Battle of Yavin. If you're keeping count, this is about 3 years from the time we first met Ulic, and 2 years from the time we were first introduced to Nomi. Before we get into the story, I want to give you a bit of background information on this arc. Dark Lords was written by Tom Veitch and Kevin J. Anderson, so we finally see both fathers of the tales come together for a collaboration. The arc is comprised of 6 issues in total. The first 5 issues are drawn by none other than Chris Gossett, and the 6th issue is penciled by Art Wetherill. The series was published by Dark Horse between October 1994 and March 1995. The cover art for all 6 issues was done by Hugh Fleming, and while I admit I don't like these covers as much as the Carrasco covers, they're still really great and I strongly suggest you check them out for yourself. And lastly, this episode of the podcast will be covering issues 1 to 3 of the Dark Lords of the Sith. So now that you're fully armed and operational with this background information, let's delve into issue 1, which is titled Masters and Students of the Force. 4 millennia before the birth of Luke Skywalker, the Jedi Order became enmeshed in dramatic and harrowing events surrounding the reappearance of the dark teachings of the Sith, an ancient race of magicians long thought extinct. 400 years ago, a dark Jedi named Freedon introduced the suppressed Sith teachings to the planet Onderon. Nad's dark side powers took hold of the isolated world, and flourished unchecked until Master Arca brought together a band of Jedi to root them out. Now, Freedon living spirit has managed to confound the great Jedi Master. On Onderon, under Arca's very nose, Nad has instructed 2 young aristocrats, Sital Keto and Alima, heirs to the throne of the Empress Tita system. Sital and Alima have returned to their homeworld as powerful initiates of the Sith way. Elsewhere, other events are unfolding that will affect the future of the galaxy. On the planet of Dantooine, a proud Jedi named Exar Kun steals his master's holocron, curious to learn more about the legendary fallen Jedi Knights who were known as the Dark Lords of the Sith. The holocron speaks, and this is what it says. Time and again, throughout the eons, the power of the dark side of the Force has advanced with the fury of a storm, sweeping up star system after star system. Only in great conflagration were the forces of the dark side defeated. The dark side has come before, and it will come again. Do not underestimate its power. That is why I have devoted my life to teaching Jedi Knights, to strengthen the light side against the tide of darkness that is sure to come. These are the words of Jedi Master Vodo Siosk Bas. While those prophetic words linger in the background, the issue opens with a recap of the events of the fall of the Sith Empire. Nagasato and his remaining Sith troops are making a desperate attempt to escape Republic forces. His ship moves towards the Denari Nova, a rare double star. We learn that the smaller star feeds on gases stolen from its larger brother. Periodically, great flares of burning gases pass from one star to the other. Now normally, no sane starship pilot would go near these volatile stars, but Sato defies the fates. He believes the order of the universe belongs to him, and he considers the death of a star system a small price to pay for his own survival. Using his Sith magic, he causes the stars to flare at the exact moment the pursuing Republic ships pass between the nova. At this point, we learn that a Jedi holocron is retelling these events. According to the holocron, legend has it that Sato escaped the cosmic holocaust he created and vanished with his followers. The holocron goes on to tell us that Sato was a member of an elite priesthood of pure Sith blood. These priests were in rebellion against their rulers, the fallen Jedi known as the Dark Lords of the Sith. The Dark Lords were powerful Jedi Knights who used the dark side of the Force to master the Sith people. There could be but one Dark Lord at a time. Okay, let's pause. So it's important to remember that the Golden Age and the Fall arc that we covered in episodes 1 to 5 of the podcast were actually written after this story arc, even though they take place before it in terms of the continuity. So if we're looking for an authority on how Sith society functioned, we'll want to rely on what was said in episodes 1 to 5. The retelling we just heard from Master Voto's holocron is at best secondhand information from a narrator trying to piece all this together after the fact. And if the name Voto Sios Boss doesn't ring a bell, just remember he was the alien Jedi on the planet Ossus who helped Nomi build her lightsaber in our last episode. Again, Voto's appearance defies description, so definitely do an image search online to get a sense of what he looks like. Okay, back to our story. The holocron continues about how the mummified remains of Sith Lords are preserved forever on a hidden world in monumental temples. Before anything further can be said, the man holding the holocron cuts in. But Master Vodo, if there was only one Dark Lord at a time, weren't the other Dark Jedi envious? The holocron confirms that indeed, due to their very nature, the Dark Jedi coveted the title of the Dark Lord. One such individual was none other than Freedon Nad. Hundreds of years ago, he roamed the stars until he found a world he could dominate using the powers of the dark side. At this point, the real Vodo, not just a recording of him in a holocron, walks into the room and asks why the fate of a renegade Jedi is of such interest to his greatest student. Master Vodo, I was only curious to see what you've been recording in your holocron. Vodo replies,
Curiosity can be rewarding, Exar-kun, but some teachings of the holocron are dangerous before you're ready.
So it's at this point we learn that the man holding the holocron is named Exar-kun, a Jedi student of considerable talent. I've heard his last name referred to as Kun or Kun, but for now I'm going to stick to Kun. Exar is a human man with short cropped black hair. He sports a red tunic, red pants, and a green cape. And before I go on, I wanted to briefly segue and let you know that if I don't specifically describe the race of a character, you can assume they're probably human. The holocron pipes up at this point and starts recounting how Nad conquered Onderon, but Vodo quickly shuts it off. He reiterates to Kun that the hidden knowledge is meant for Jedi Masters only. Exar-kun complains that he's ready to learn about the Sith. He feels like Vodo underestimates him, but Vodo won't budge. He basically tells him, look, when you've lived with this discipline for a few more years, perhaps then you'll be ready to study the things of the dark side. At this point, we shift location to the Empress Teta system. In episodes 1 to 5 of the podcast, we called it the Korus system, but it was later named after the Empress who united the 7 planets. We are told that the system is a prime source of raw carbonite, which is essential to the manufacture of faster-than-light drives. The descendants of the Empress continue to rule the system, but they've been forced to share their power with the commercial interests that control the carbonite mines. Of course, carbonite is the material Han Solo was frozen in Empire Strikes Back. The scene opens on the inside of a large mining station. Representatives of the mining guild are giving a tour to the royal family and explaining that with all the new starship construction, the demand for carbonite is greater than ever. The tour is crashed by none other than Satal and Alima Keto, the young aristocrats that we were introduced to in our last episode. Alongside the two are a bunch of their fellow young aristocrats and their tutor, a man named Korus. Satal's father steps forth, sputtering with rage.
Tutor Korus, why have you brought my children here during the royal inspection? This is an unforgivable breach of protocol.
Satal smirks and leans forward. Don't pick on old Korus, father. He has something to show you. Go ahead, Korus. Show Lord Keto what Alima did to your tongue. The next scene is something out of the movie Alien. Korus bends forward and a long worm with sharp teeth begins to make its way out of his mouth. We're reminded that Satal and Alima formed a secret society with their friends called the Krath, and that they've been dabbling in Sith magic for months. Last episode, we saw how they were given secret Sith knowledge and spells by the ghost of Freedon Nad. Well, this horrible experiment is the direct result of their forbidden knowledge. As Korus keels over, the alien creature he just vomited from his mouth begins to attack one of the mining guild representatives who tries to sound the alarm. This thing is truly the stuff of nightmares as it clamps down in his arm and begins to consume him wholesale. Lord Keto has had enough of this. He calls on his royal protectors to take Satal and Alima prisoner, but they won't be taken so easily. Alima begins to use the dark side to create Sith illusions. The royal protectors' swords turn into deadly vipers and begin to coil themselves around the guards. As the protectors fall into a catatonic shock, the other members of the secret society grab Lord Keto and his wife. While Satal watches, his father and mother are carefully dipped into carbonite. The political coup of the Krath is complete. The next panel shows the former rulers hanging carbonite slabs above an elaborate dinner table. Satal holds up a goblet of wine and he says, "Father, you've had your day. Now we will have ours." Reports start pouring in from the carbonite smelters, and they've all surrendered to the new rulers of the Empress Tita system. Satal asks whether the minister agreed to their demands. In response, one of the Krath gleefully takes the cover off a silver platter to display a severed head.
"Yes, Satal. He agreed to join us for dinner."
We find out that well before they made their pilgrimage to Onderon, Satal and Alima had the Titan military in their pocket. I said it before, and I'll say it again. If Empress Tita wasn't spinning in her grave last time, she definitely is by now. With a wave of his hand, Satal talks about how they had to obliterate 3 more cities on the planet of Kirik because they insisted on loyalty to his father. Putting a delicacy in her mouth, Alima says, "Everyone who does not accept our authority should be publicly humiliated. We can feed them to your father's torture droids. Sometimes the old ways are the best." Almost as if to highlight their depravity, a very much alive Korus comes forth holding a decanter of wine, and we see that his mouth has been sewn shut. Once their tutor, he's now reduced to nothing but a slave. Korus trips and falls, spilling the wine everywhere in the process. With a flick of her hand and muttering the word, "Idiot," Alima uses the full power of the dark side to literally fry Korus. His body is reduced to a smoking husk. As the aristocrats all chuckle, Satal calls for another servant with more wine. Our next scene opens in above the great walled city of Viziz on the planet of Onderon. After their heroic defeat of the dark side, the Jedi Knights are enjoying a much-deserved holiday. Nomi and Ulic are both flying mounted beasts through the skies, waving to Master Arca below. Arca watches them and tells the other Jedi students that he regrets having to cut this holiday short. He's received word that there was a political uprising in the Empress Tita system, and he believes it's connected to the Frida Nad uprising that just occurred on Onderon. This guy isn't a Jedi Master for nothing. His instincts are right on the money. Arca gathers the Jedi Knights and tells them that he thought the dark side threat had been contained on Onderon, but he was wrong. Dace Diath asks how this could be possible. If you remember from last episode, Dace is a Jedi Knight who we were introduced to during the uprising, and it may be relevant to know that he's drawn somewhat differently here, and without the cool hairdo he had the last time we saw him. Our Twi'lek Jedi friend, Taut Deneba, explains that they have learned about 2 young Tetans who were on Onderon during the height of the uprising. They even have names, Satal Keto and his cousin Alima, heirs to the throne. The Miralukan Jedi Shoaneb Kulu goes on to explain that they apparently made contact with King Amin, and that he initiated them to secret Sith magic. Osweilam, another Jedi Knight, expresses disbelief that these 2 could have become that much of a threat in so little time. We also learn at this point that Wylam's species is called Vultan, not to be confused with a similar sounding Star Trek species, which will go unnamed on this podcast. Kay Keldroma, sporting a very imposing metal arm, looks off to the side and says, "I bet they don't understand what they've unleashed, and that makes them all the more dangerous." Arca informs the collected Jedi that several of them are going to go to Ossus to tell the Jedi leaders what they witnessed on Onderon. He explains that Nomi and Ulic will stay behind. He plans to give Nomi another lesson in Jedi battle meditation. Afterwards, he expects her and Ulic to go directly to the Empress Tita system to lead the Jedi effort. While Arca and Nomi go off to train, Kay convinces Ulic to help him study some of the Sith artifacts that were collected from King Amin's private collection. Never a good idea, but I guess we'll see where this goes. Picking up a relic, a mist begins to form around Ulic and materializes into the spirit of Frida Nad. Despite the removal of his remains to one of Onderon's moons, the spirit still lurks on the planet. He warns Ulic not to interfere with the work of the dark side. He tells him that the Sith are destined to rise again, and nothing can prevent that. Ulic says,
"You talk big for a spirit. I thought Arca drove you away."
Nad chuckles at this and says that Ulic will be one of the great ones, and that he cannot avoid his destiny. The scene ends with Nad saying,
"And there is another, even greater than you."
As if on cue, we return to the planet Dantooine, and if you remember, this is where the issue opened. It's Master Voto's world. Exar Kun is engaged in a fierce lightsaber sparring session with one of Master Voto's other students, a Jedi named Crado. Unfortunately for Crado, he is no match for Exar Kun. Holding his lightsaber over his defeated foe, Kun says, "Frankly, it is no honor to defeat you, Crado. Will is half the winning." The next Jedi contender is one of Master Voto's other students, a humanoid named Sylvar. We learn that she is Kratos' lover, and eager to avenge his lost honor. She ignites a yellow lightsaber and attacks Kun, who in turn is wielding a blue lightsaber. In a shocking display of arrogant racism, Kun says, "It's time that you learned that animal Jedi are no match for humans." We learn that Sylvar is a Cathar. They're a cat-like humanoid species that we'll become well acquainted with when we reach the Knights of the Old Republic. And I should probably mention at this point that Crado is also a Cathar. Unfortunately, Exar Kun's racism provokes Sylvar, and she gives in to her instinctive rage. Not great for a Jedi apprentice. She uses claws to slash across Exar Kun's face, drawing blood and leaving him permanently scarred. Kun begins to feel his own rage boiling. He knocks Sylvar to the floor, and he tells her to get up and fight him. Sylvar looks up at him. "You have fooled Master Vodo, but you don't fool me. You are no Jedi." In a fit of rage, Kun raises his lightsaber to strike her down. Master Vodo quickly intervenes and uses a staff to smack the lightsaber right out of Kun's hand.
"Seize this, Exar Kun. Anger is not the way."
With the Force, Vodo can make a simple staff more powerful than a lightsaber. Kun decides to face off against Master Vodo and prove his superiority. On the other hand, Vodo is resolved to teach him a lesson about his arrogance.
"Your high estimation of your own abilities betrays you, Exar Kun."
Vodo uses his staff to smack Kun down to the ground and backs him up into a rock. Looking to his side, Kun sees another fallen lightsaber. A master should not underestimate the one to whom he has given knowledge. He uses the Force to call the second lightsaber to him, and he rises up. Using both lightsabers to attack Vodo, he manages to break the Jedi Master's staff in two. The fight is at an end. Vodo congratulates Kun and tells him that he's the best student he's ever had, but he also senses something is missing in Kun, an empty place hidden even from Kun himself. The issue ends with Master Vodo essentially telling Exar Kun that he senses a darkness within him. What does this darkness portend? Well, you'll have to keep listening to find out. Issue 2 is titled The Quest for the Sith. It opens on the planet Onderon, where we learn that Freedon Nad's derelict starship, the one that brought him to the planet in the first place, is being converted into a Jedi outpost. Tot and Kay discuss how they are expecting a Jedi archaeologist who is apparently investigating Freedon Nad and the Sith. Master Arca has already warned them to say as little as possible about the Sith artifacts they recovered. Exiting from his ship, the Jedi archaeologist introduces himself. "May the Force be with you. I am Exar Kun, Jedi archaeologist. I am told that you recovered a trove of Sith artifacts." Kay and Tot explain how the artifacts are being shipped to Ossus. Kun tells them that it's imperative that he examine them before they leave the planet. He invokes his official status as an archaeologist. Tot tells him to bring it up with Arca himself, who arrives on the scene with a great flying war beast. Kun introduces himself to Arca, again with a "May the Force be with you, I am Exar Kun." But before he can even get his request out, Arca tells him that he cannot help him. Kun flusters. "You must have spoken with Master Vodo Sios Bask. He is unaware that I am now connected to the Academy of Jedi Archaeology. He thinks
I have not spoken with your master. Everything I know about you I have learned through the Force, and you are no archaeologist."
Arca tells Kun that he's not welcome on Onderon. Exar Kun brushes this away, telling Arca that he's a Jedi Knight, and as a result, he's free to come and go as he pleases. Walking away from Master Arca and his students, Kun tells them that he will begin his research even without their help. The scene shifts to the Empress Teta system. We learn that Satal and Lima have instituted a reign of terror among the 7 Teton worlds. The Krath are preparing to move an ancient military command station into position over Korus Major, the last planet to hold out against their coup. The assault ships of the Krath are unique to the Teton system, flying decks crammed with shock troops wearing ceremonial armor of an earlier time. We're told that after centuries of peace, the Teton worlds felt no need to adopt modern weapons, and as a result, the proud warriors of the 7 worlds have continued to train with weapons of a glorious earlier era. So basically, spears and swords. Satal and Alima bring an even older and more sinister weapon to their reign of terror, sorcery and mystical power. Alima in particular has become proficient in Sith illusion magic.
Tell me, Satal, what warrior can stand who believes his sword has ceased to be a sword?
And using the same trick that she did before, she makes all of these soldiers think that their swords are deadly vipers. Even from her command station high above the planet, her Sith magic does its work. Satal is brimming with confidence. He believes that if they can subdue Korus Major, they might even be able to take on the Jedi Order itself. As if on cue, the joint peacekeeping force of the Galactic Republic and the Jedi Knights emerges from hyperspace. On the bridge of the command ship, Ulic Keldroma tells the captain to transmit a ceasefire. On his end, Satal orders that no response be given to this ceasefire. He tells his commander that they will let the power of the ancient Sith speak for them. Alima begins to call on the dark side. Alien life forms, unseen for thousands of years, appear out of the dark well of night. These beings, known as space grazers, are said to have once roamed between the stars, preying on galactic space traffic. On the Republic command ship, Ulic begins to shout,
"Space grazers! I thought they were extinct. They'll destroy the fleet."
In response, Nomi grabs her forehead, Jean Grey style, and she says, "Wait, what we're seeing are illusions. If each of you will listen to the Force, you'll sense the real attack. We are being assaulted by the power of the dark side." Before we can see the outcome of this battle, the scene shifts again back to Onderon. Exar Kun wanders the streets of Aziz. He finds himself drawn to a plaza where two street philosophers harangue the crowd. They talk of how society is doomed now that Queen Aminoa and King Amun have been removed from power. The crowd reacts violently with the whole "Down with Darksiders" chant, and they begin to hurl stones at the philosophers. Exar Kun ignites his lightsaber and intervenes. Contrary to what the mob expects, he defends the two men and asks why the crowd is afraid to let them speak. He whispers for the two men to follow him out of there, and after leading them to safety and promising them money, the two street philosophers reveal themselves to be Nadists. They tell Kun that Arca has hidden the remains of Frida Nad on Duxun, a moon orbiting Onderon. It was there that Arca built a tomb to last 1,000,000 years. Again, like I said last episode, Arca should have just burned the remains. This tomb is like catnip for Darksiders and shady Jedi like Exar Kun. It's a beacon, they can't help themselves. So, of course, Exar Kun makes his way to the moon with the two Nadists. On his way to the tomb, he is confronted by one of the beasts of Duxun, but he makes quick work of it using his lightsaber. If Arca thought that these creatures would provide natural guardians for the tomb, well, he thought wrong. Once Kun reaches the tomb, he realizes it was fashioned out of Mandalorian iron. While it was not specifically named at this point in the expanded universe, we know now that this iron is called Beskar. And if any of you have seen The Mandalorian, you know that Beskar is one of the strongest metals in the galaxy, and largely impervious to blasters and blades. That said, it's not a complete defense. Exar Kun sets his lightsaber blade to the most concentrated setting and begins to cut his way into the tomb. He also starts to feel a dark power moving around him, a power that wants him to succeed. Once inside, Kun faces the tombs of Queen Aminoa, King Amun, and Frida Nad. He begins to doubt. He can hear Master Voto's voice in his head telling him to turn back, but the die has already been cast, and his curiosity gets the better of him. When he comes face to face with Frida Nad's remains, the ghost appears before him. He tells Kun that he has a gift to set him on his true path. Beneath his husk, there lies a secret. He commands Exar Kun to take his corpse out of the sarcophagus. Underneath Nad's remains are two ancient scrolls. The ghost tells him that they were written by his master, who was a Dark Lord.
"My lord's words will guide you to the last home of the Sith. There you and I will meet again, to begin the awakening."
When Exar Kun leaves the tomb, he is confronted by the two Nadists, and they are holding blasters pointed at him. They tell him to hand over the scrolls that he found. Kun feels a wave of dark power igniting his anger. Before they can even react, he ignites his lightsaber and cuts them both down.
"The anger, it was on me like lightning. Master Voto, what have I done?"
In perhaps one of the few moments of self-reflection he's had since beginning his dark journey, Kun is disturbed by how easy it was to accept the dark power within him. The feeling is a short-lived one. By the time he's back on his ship and flying away, he can't contain his excitement at what great secrets those scrolls will reveal. Let's pause for a moment and talk about Exar Kun. This guy is like the opposite of Odan-Ur, the Jedi we met in the first 5 episodes of the podcast. Both are obsessed with knowledge and lore, but whereas Odan-Ur wanted to use his knowledge for good, it is becoming clear that Exar Kun wants to use it for potentially more nefarious purposes. Here's the difference. Odan-Ur would never strike someone down in cold blood just to preserve or obtain knowledge. Exar Kun, I'm not so sure about. Back in the Empress Teta system, the Sith illusions have been exposed. In response, the Republic forces begin to move in on the Krath command station. Alima tries to send more illusions at the Jedi, but Nomi manages to pinpoint her using the Force. She gets inside Alima's head, and the two have a battle of wills in a way that only Force users can. Nomi quickly beats Alima, and then she falls unconscious. Even though her illusions begin to fade because she's unconscious now, Satal is still pretty confident that his starfighters will prevail. You see, before she was rendered unconscious, Alima seeded illusions of more starfighters among the real thing. The Republic forces assume that they were all illusions, but that turned out to be false. The Republic is unable to stop the onslaught. The fighter pilots, who are under Satal's hypnotic will, begin to literally kamikaze themselves against the Republic ships. One of them even breaches the bridge canopy of the Republic command ship. In the process, Ulic is impaled by a flying piece of debris. Cursing herself for falling into this trap, Nomi desperately tries to pull the shrapnel out of Ulic's side. Holding Ulic in her arms, she tells him that his wound will heal. At the same time, the captain of the command ship orders a complete retreat to give the Republic forces time to rethink the entire operation. On the last page of this issue, we flash back to Exar Kun, who is many light years away aboard his ship, the Starstorm 1. He is carefully examining the Sith scrolls using an electronic translator, and here's what they reveal. Once the Dark Jedi had dominated the Sith, they threatened to subvert the very existence of the Republic. Their power was greatly feared, and the Sith were mocked for extermination. Persecuted for their knowledge that was feared by lesser men, they wandered from system to system, leaving a trail of myths and legends, and the world Korriban was to be their final resting place. Cue the creepy dark side music from the Emperor's throne room that I will absolutely get sued for if I try and use in this podcast. Issue 3, our last issue for today, is ominously titled Descent to the Dark Side. The issue opens with a fleet surrounding a planet called Deneba. We're told that thousands of Jedi Knights and Masters have gathered to debate momentous events. Bold young magicians calling themselves the Krath have used ancient Sith magic to murder their parents and take control of the Empress Teta system. Now, against all galactic tradition, the Krath have arrogantly declared war on the Jedi Knights themselves. A great meeting of Jedi is convened at a place called Mount Meru, and the meeting is presided over by none other than Odan-Ur himself. This guy is looking particularly ancient, which is no surprise given that he's over 1,000 years old at this point. What a reveal! I'm happy to see that he's still alive. As a respected spokesman, we learn that he's presided over Jedi assemblies for 6 centuries. Nomi is holding a much older Vima and standing beside Ulic, who is patched up and in a sling after getting impaled last issue. She notices that Ulic's wounds have not yet healed and asks him about it. He explains that it isn't a natural injury. They were bombarded with Sith magic when the starfighter hit the command deck. In a single page, we see all of the Jedi we've met assembled. Arca and Thawne are present, Tot Danita, Os Wylam, Shoaneb Kulu, Dace Diath, Kay Keldroma, and even Kurl Tok, the Nazar Jedi we met last episode. The only people missing are Master Vodo and his 2 Cathar apprentices. Shoaneb mentions how the great conflict with the dark side isn't supposed to happen for another 1,000 years according to prophecy, but Wylam reminds her that prophecies are, by their very nature, notoriously vague. Sharing a quiet word with one another, Arca tells Master Thawne that Vodo is in great torment these days, as one of his students left to seek forbidden knowledge. At that very moment, we flash to none other than the student himself, Exar Kun. His obsessive curiosity about the dark side of the Force has led him all the way to Korriban. He gazes out upon the Valley of the Dark Lords, the final resting place of the Sith. He's overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it. Massive monuments and statues line the canyon on both sides. As he begins to make his way through the dead landscape, he comes across the remains of space pirates. While pondering what it was that killed them, dark side energies begin to swirl and the skeletons come alive. Kun pulls out his lightsaber and he begins to fight back. The spirit of Freedom Nad appears and guides him towards a place called the Great Temple. Stepping inside, Exar Kun is able to feel the immense darkness and anger that permeates the place. Again, He begins to have misgivings and decides to retreat to his ship to think things over. Before he can do that, the entrance seals shut behind him. Nad tells him that he has only one choice, to proceed ahead, to the future. Back on Deneba, Odan calls on Nomi and Ulic to address the Jedi Assembly. Nomi tells the crowd that Ulic has been made Jedi Watchman of the Teton system, and that he has a plan. A couple of the Jedi call Ulic out for his failure, but he ignores it, and he presses on. He points out that a war with the Krath could last for years and result in many unnecessary deaths. And for what? The Krath would likely survive, and they would be free to continue spreading their dark message. Before he can go on, an ancient Jedi human male named Shayoto asks to address the crowd. And when I say ancient, I mean ancient. I looked this guy up on Wikipedia, and it says he was born in 4800 BBY. Shayoto speaks of the 100-Year Darkness and the Great Hyperspace War. He tells the assembled crowd that Darksiders act in complete secrecy until the leaders of society have fallen to their evil seduction. Then they strike with great suddenness, bringing down civilizations that took eons to build. Ulic continues.
No one disagrees with you, Shayoto. The Krath conspiracy must be torn out by its roots before it can spread to other systems. But the only way that will happen is if one of us joins the Krath and learns the secrets that have possessed them and made them powerful. Shoaneb Kulu cries out that such an attempt will end in disaster for everyone involved. Even Dace Diath calls the plan unthinkable. Master Arca also speaks up, reminding Ulic that there is the way of the Jedi, and then there is the way to destruction. Before we can find out how the Jedi intend to deal with the Krath, we're brought back to Korriban. Exar Kun travels even deeper into the temple, the ghost of Nad ever at his side. Amazing. What is this place? A mausoleum for vanquished enemies. Sealed within the crystal are the spirits of the Jedi Masters who opposed the ancient Sith and lost. Perhaps it is time to liberate the long-dead Jedi. Perhaps it is time to liberate you, Exar Kun.
At that moment, the room begins to shake. Nad releases a wave of cataclysmic energy, shattering the great crystal and annihilating the Jedi spirits within. The wave also has the effect of shattering Exar Kun's bones in 100 places. He calls out to Nad to help him. Nad laughs.
What's this? A Jedi not ready to face death? If you want to live, there is a power that can save you. Accept the dark side of the Force. Let the fathomless energy flow into you.
Kun resists this suggestion. He calls out to Master Vodo, and we're told that his profound anguish resonates through the Force. Many distant Jedi sense it, but only one knows who it is coming from. Master Vodo, who is now on his way to Deneba, laments to himself that the darkness has finally found his apprentice. Elsewhere on Vodo's ship, Crado and Sylvar, the two Cathar Jedi, talk about their plans for the future. Crado wants to marry and return to their home planet, also conveniently called Cathar. Sylvar tells him that she'll gladly bear his children, but that she remains a Jedi forever. Vodo calls out to them to take over the ship's controls as they approach Deneba. Despite the vast distances between them, he is going to try and help Exar Kun. Master Vodo begins to meditate and draw the protection of the light side around his fallen apprentice. His efforts are blocked by Nad's spirit. The ghost's hatred lashes out at him and knocks him out of his meditative state. So much for helping his apprentice. Back on Korriban, Nad begins to mock the fallen Jedi.
Poor little Jedi. Vodo cannot help you at such a great distance. No one can help you, except yourself.
In a moment of great weakness, Kun says,
All right, yes, I want to live. You say the words, but you do not open yourself. I accept your terms, damn you. You are lying. Surrender to the dark side or you will die. I said I accept. Good. Then, be healed.
Exar Kun's fractured bones begin to knit themselves, and his strength returns. But nothing is as it was before. We must ask the question, what kind of healing can come from the dark side of the Force? Many of the Jedi on Deneba, half a galaxy away, hear Exar Kun's screams of pain and terror. Sylvar calls to Master Vodo and tells him that it is Exar's voice. Master Vodo tells her that the sound she heard is the first echo of a storm that will consume the galaxy. Well, that's no good. We're told that it is indeed a critical moment for the Jedi as the dark forces seem to gain ascendancy everywhere at once. At that moment, the Jedi Conclave is further interrupted by a barrage of life pods that strike Deneba's surface. Teton war droids come spilling out and begin to attack the assembled Jedi. Simultaneously, modified servant droids unveil weapons and begin to turn on their Jedi masters. In the words of Admiral Akbar, "It's a trap!" Much to Nomi's horror, Vima is snatched by one of the droids. Before anyone can react, the droid is sliced in two by Sylvar. She introduces herself to Nomi and Vima, telling them that she is an apprentice of Master Voto. Over 1,000 Jedi fight back against the war droids. Master Arca uses the Force to cause many of these droids to short-circuit, while other Jedi use combinations of lightsabers and light staffs to take down their foes. We're told that Arca learned his technique years ago during a great droid revolution on Coruscant. Very cool. We're also told that the droids have been programmed to seek out the strongest Jedi among the crowd. As one of them almost gets the drop on Ulic, Arca manages to short-circuit it just in time.
Thank you, Master Arca. You saved my life. Just be careful. A Jedi is as fallible as any man. You must learn to sense even the threats that you can't see. A Jedi never knows who... Master Arca!
At that moment, Arca Jeth is impaled by a war droid's spear. A Jedi blaster quickly dispatches the droid, but it's too late.
Master, it's my fault. The enemy has found me, Ulic, but the enemy knows only darkness. I know what the enemy does not. I know the light.
With that, Arca dies and becomes one with the Force. Ulic is left in the classic pose on his knees holding the remains of Arca's cloak. His master is gone, fated much like Obi-Wan did at the end of A New Hope. Let's take a pause for the great Master Arca. On one side of the galaxy, a great Jedi passes to the nameless realm of his ancestors. And on another side, on the planet Korriban, a broken Jedi receives new life. Freedon Nad tells Exar Kun that the dark side has made him more than whole. Kun responds that he will never belong to the dark side. Nad laughs at this. Once you accept it, the dark side is with you forever. He guides Kun through the tomb, showing him walls lined with sarcophagi, the resting place of many Dark Lords. Kun is surprised to find that he can read the Sith hieroglyphics. Nad tells him of a great Sith magician named Nagasado, who learned how to give flesh to departed spirits. He explains that Sado quarreled with the reigning Dark Lord and was sentenced to die. He and his followers tried to hide on the fourth moon of Yavin, but now Sado is gone, and his followers have devolved into primitives. Kun is told that his artifacts and his alchemy still remain on Yavin 4 undisturbed. The spirit directs Exar Kun to go to Yavin 4 in order to complete his research, but first he tells him that the spirits of the ancients demand a test of his commitment to the dark side. Okay, time out. We know that what Freedon Nad said is only partially true. Yes, Sado fled to Yavin 4, but we know from episodes 4 and 5 of the podcast that Sado was the reigning Dark Lord at the time. Now, whether that was legitimate, well, Ludo Kresh would have a thing or two to say about that. But again, it's important to remember that these stories were written before the plot was fleshed out for the fall of the Sith Empire, so we'll need to take this retelling, quote-unquote, with a grain of salt. Even so, the discrepancy is easily explained. It could be that the Sith who survived Nagasado were embarrassed about the fact that he became a Dark Lord of the Sith and brought the entire empire to ruin, so in an effort to make it look like he was never a Dark Lord, they fabricated this story about him rebelling against the true Dark Lord, which would have been Ludo Kresh at the time. That's easy to understand and easy enough to accept. Anyways, back to the story. Kun's lightsaber is snatched away by Nad. For a ghost, this guy can do quite a lot. At the same time, guardian creatures leap down from the tombs. Kun calls out to Nad to help him, but he's told by the spirit to help himself with the power he was given. One of the creatures pounces on the fallen Jedi and moves in for the killing bite. When Kun tries to reach out with the Force, he finds his access to the light side mysteriously blocked. Asking Master Voto to forgive him, he draws on the dark side and calls his lightsaber back. Using the power of anger, Exar Kun ignites the blade and annihilates the tomb guardians. A river of rage flows through him. As the last guardian dies, a spectral voice resonates over the mummified remains of the ancient Dark Lords.
He is ready.
Unable to accept his lot, Exar Kun tells Nad that even though he is going to Yavin 4 to continue his investigations, he will never be seduced by the dark side. Well, I got news for you. You already were. In the last page of this issue, we return to our Jedi friends on Deneba. Kay tells the others that the droids were built in the Teton system. To no one's surprise, he concludes that the Krath were behind the surprise attack. Nomi asks Ulic what he plans to do now that Arca is dead. He tells her that he's going ahead with his plan. He is going to infiltrate and destroy the Krath from within. Nomi warns him that if he takes up the dark path,
he will become infected with darkness and forget the good things that he learned. Ulic, you are a great Jedi. I believe you will choose the right course. I know you will.
How can you know what I'm feeling? Arca saved my life and I let him die. If I had been a true Jedi, Arca would have still been alive.
Please, do not underestimate the power of the dark side. At all costs, do not underestimate it.
Despite these warnings, Ulic is determined to bring evil to justice. I will do this for Master Arca, for all the Jedi Knights, and for the good of the Republic. I will conquer the dark side of the Force.
And so, the issue ends with Nomi holding Ulic. There you have it, folks. We're through the first half of the Dark Lords of the Sith, and what a half it's been. We have some new enemies, and we've had to say goodbye to a dear old friend. Things are not looking good. Will Ulic be able to conquer the dark side of the Force? Will Exar Kun be redeemed? Find out answers to these questions and many more in our next episode as we finish off the Dark Lords arc, and may the Force be with you, always.